Welcome to the Perlo Podcast. We talk construction, its people, its challenges, its opportunities. And Chris and Whitney, you're more on the project management side, and Broc, you're working on the pre-construction side, which means you're looking at putting the pricing together before the buildings ever begin, and then Whitney and Chris are more on the side where they take it from the point where it's priced all the way through getting it built and completed. So let's compare and contrast those job duties a little bit. Chris, what do you think is the biggest difference between estimating and project management?
They definitely overlap. You have to be able to do both as a project manager. I think that's very important and key to hit on. I like to be involved early on when I'm estimating a project. If I'm going to run it, I want to know the ins and outs. And if there's a problem, I want to be able to say, oh, that was my fault, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to be handed a problem. But I'd say estimating, you're going to get a lot of touches, right? There's more of a quick turn, whether it's a 2, 4, maybe it could be up to 8-week bid period, right? But you're getting lots and lots of reps. Whereas on a PM side, your rep might be, you might be stuck on a project for 1 to 2 years, right? Mm-hmm. So you get one rep at an estimate and then you got to run it. So you'll have multiple projects typically to go at the same time, but it's more of a drawn out process. I like to say on the PM side, we take maybe a napkin sketch of a building to handing over the keys, and everything in between, and there's a lot in between, you've got to be able to handle. So I think those are kind of my thoughts.
What about you, Broc?
Yeah, kind of like you said, you got to be able to do both, and I think it helps the pre-construction side, the estimating side as well, to have run projects in the past, to know the parts and pieces you're putting together and how they go together before you price them. Not always the case, but it definitely helps. And I think probably the big difference between my role and Chris and Whitney is mine's all up front. Like Chris said, I got to help problem solve, put the parts and pieces together, make sure the scopes are covered, and then pass it off. And their role is more solving problems, contracting, managing costs, managing time, and those sort of things.
Yeah, they definitely work hand in hand, and certainly you guys have to be able to meld your thinking. So if you're putting the price together on something and then you hand it off to them to run, you've got to be able to communicate effectively enough that they know what your thought process was for how to build it. And that doesn't mean we don't change, because sometimes that happens, right? Things change in the field or the project changes for whatever reason. And so we do a lot of changing. I do want to hit on kind of the planning that goes into construction management, because an awful lot of what we do is reactionary. But you can only react well if it was planned out well in the first place, right? So we spend so much time on the pre-construction side, ideally planning every part and piece of that project. That way we can react when a curveball's thrown, because it's not a matter of if a curveball's thrown. There will be something, whether it's COVID or a changing OSHA requirement or a sick building inspector, and now that throws off your schedule. I mean, there's always something. Maybe a subcontractor goes out of business and they were signed up on your project. I mean, there's just so many things, or a lot of what we get into is the building is built speculatively and then a tenant moves in and now they want to change elements of the building. So you've got to be able to react. But we have to have that planning foundation in place in order to react well.
Mm-hmm. I would say, Alyssa, one of the cool things about Perlo is that you are you're given the opportunity to be an estimator and a project manager, and you get to see the estimating side and all that's put in, the work that Broc does every day, but be able to execute the project schedule and the contracts. And I think that's what sets us apart from our competition, is that we get that opportunity to estimate our own work.
Yeah, that's a good distinction to make, because depending on where you're at in terms of construction companies, and a lot of times dictated by the size of the company or the size of the projects that you're putting together, you may be an estimator and a project manager all at the same time. And depending on the company, you might only be a project manager or you might only be an estimator. It really kind of depends on how the company is structured. So I think for somebody who's looking to get into the industry, that's something they might consider. And it might be something you don't know right off the bat too. You may not have gone into project management thinking, I'm going to be an estimator, but you find out that that's really where your strength is, or vice versa. Visit us online at perlo.biz, subscribe to catch our future episodes, and join us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube to discuss all things construction. And finally, work hard, do what's right, and make it fun.